One cannot live in society and be free from society. Vladimir Lenin. What's up, beautiful people of the planet called Earth and possibly any other planet? Welcome to the 10+1 episode of History's Most Influential Humans podcast. It's still your host, Damilare_Mappa. So I'm dedicating this episode to the victims of Lekki Black Tuesday and everyone who died during the EndSARS protests in Nigeria. I'm extremely optimistic and hopeful that their deaths for a better Nigeria shall not be in vain. Amen. So moving on, today's HMIH is someone who has been termed a good guy and also a bad guy from different opinions. Well, I'd leave anyone listening to be a judge of that. But on this episode, I'd briefly be enlightening you on why and how Vladimir Lenin became an extremely influential human during his lifetime and long after his death. Full name Vladimir Ilyich Ulyanov, popularly known as Lenin, was the third of 8 children. His father died from brain hemorrhage when he was 15, and this took a toll on his behavior as he subsequently renounced his belief in God. 2 years later, his elder brother was killed by hanging because of a revolutionary attempt to assassinate the Tsar King Alexander III. Despite the emotional trauma of his father's and brother's death, he continued his high school and graduated top of his class, then went on to study law at Kazan University. After entering Kazan University in 1887, Lenin joined a societal group that represented men of a particular region, and he became their representative. In a demonstration against government restrictions that banned student societies, he was arrested by the police, who were already closely watching him to see if he had intentions of a revolution like his brother, if only they knew. And after being accused of being the ringleader in the demonstration, he was expelled and exiled to his family estate, where he started his journey of self-teaching through books. Later on, Lenin discovered Karl Marx's 1867 book named Capital, and this was the beginning of his idolization of Marxism, a social political theory that argued that societies developed in stages, and this development resulted from class struggle, and that capitalist societies would ultimately give way to socialist societies and then communist societies. This might be confusing to those who aren't thorough economic students like it was for me, but for knowledge's sake, Lenin just hated the monarchy system of government and wanted to replace it with socialism/communism that believes people should be treated equally, given equal opportunities, and that many of a country's industries should be government-owned, even though it meant being a stern dictator. Because Lenin's mother was the respected widow of a nobleman, she was able to persuade the authorities to allow her son write his degree exams externally at the University of St. Petersburg, where he obtained the equivalent of a first-class degree with honors in 1890. So the dude was brilliant. But unfortunately, his graduation celebrations were affected by the death of his sister Olga from typhoid. Subsequently after, Lenin devoted most of his time to radical politics, formulating ideas about how Marxism applied to Russia. And after continuously being a threat to the government for years through his various actions, he was arrested, and in 1897, he was sentenced to 3 years exile in eastern Siberia. But this didn't stop his intentions to overthrow the capitalist monarchy that ruled over Russia at the time. But mistakenly, the government only considered Lenin a minor threat, which was their undoing. On 10th July 1898, Lenin got married in a Siberian church. His wife Nadia was a Marxist teacher who also got exiled to Siberia from Russia for organizing a strike, a match made in only God knows where. Events that happened after his exile in Siberia are so numerous that it would be impossible to discuss in just one episode. But let's just say, after several illegal acts, numerous arrests, fleeing, party arguments, publications, failed revolutions, illnesses, his mother's death, World War I, and so much more, Lenin never for once gave up on his verdict to overthrow the monarchy system of government in Russia. During World War I, Alexander II had to go out of Russia, and a provisional government was established, headed by a man called Alexander Kerensky. On August 1917, the commander-in-chief of the Russian army staged a coup to overthrow the provisional government, and Alexander Kerensky sought the help of Bolshevik members who had the same ideals as Lenin, after he had imprisoned some of the Bolsheviks earlier that same year, when Lenin came to Russia to criticize the provisional government. The coup was quelled by a group of workers named the Red Guards. During this time, Lenin was exiled in Finland, and on hearing about the situation in Russia, which seemed perfect for his plans, he quickly rushed back to Russia, and after some meetings and convincing, he was able to persuade the majority of the Bolsheviks to lead an armed insurrection to take over from the provisional government, which they did, and in October 1917, the Bolsheviks declared a new government, the Council of People's Commissars of Sovnarkom, subsequently known as the Soviet Union. The Bolsheviks insisted that Lenin be the chairman, thus beginning the controversial government of Vladimir Lenin and the Soviet Union. After taking full charge as the new government, the Bolsheviks executed all the family of the former monarchy because they allegedly wanted to make sure no heir from the family would come back with foreign aid to take power after all their struggles. It took a while before Russians knew about this, and a lot of them were unhappy with this action, but some would argue that it was one of the tough decisions the new government had to make in order to secure their hold and build a new and improved Russia, although it isn't certain if Lenin gave the order. The government of Lenin was said to have been brutal and merciless, especially because he escaped about 2 assassination attempts. But despite the brutality and harshness against those who tried to oppose his government, a lot of people would argue that his government was very progressive for Russia at the time, as it gave Russians the basic needs they wanted at the time, such as food, shelter, and an 8-hour working period, contrary to the 11-hour working period forced on them by the previous monarchy, and also the fact that Lenin called off the war against Germany immediately he came into power, a war that cost Russia so much lives and resources. A lot of deaths and struggle happened during his time, such as that of the civil war between the Red Army and the White Army, the Tambov Rebellion, and so on. But that didn't change the fact that his government had an accelerating impact on the modernization and literacy of the modern-day Russia, compared to how backwards the country was before and during the early 20th century. Although a lot still wonder how Russia would have been if Lenin never ruled the country, but that still remains a mystery. Within May 1922 to March 1923, Lenin had stroke attacks 3 times, and he eventually died after falling into a coma on 21st January 1924, aged 54. He was honored by over 1 million mourners visiting his temporary grave. There were erected statues of Lenin around Russia, and Petrograd was briefly named Leningrad until the fall of the Soviet Union in 1991, after which statues of him were pulled down. Lenin lived a life of struggle for a specific cause, and he never gave up on that cause of change till he died. Well, that is a skill worth emulating, if not other terrible ones. So that's it on today's quite long episode of HMIH Farms. Join me next 2 weeks on another educative, enlightening, and historically influential episode. Till next time, buddies, I bid you farewell.